What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Writers Room live stream. I've got some really fun stuff for you today. Hey, Nicoletta. Hey, Tom. Zeros, Ace Goals, Fredward, Modobi, Old Man Mar. What's up, Noah? Eustace. Good to see everybody. My new frameworks are done. Today we are going to go through them, and I'm going to be giving them to you for free today. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an enjoyable stream for everyone involved. Hey, Ross, Alex, what's going on? And my other Alex, Alex Skeeth and Alex English. Jaleel, good to see you. Carl Dojo, good to see you, man. Right. Yep, new frameworks today, Tom. It's going to be fun. I hope the Discord link is working. Josh, if you can make sure my Discord link is good to go on the YouTube live stream so that I can make sure people actually can get in and get their new frameworks. All right, I'm going to let some people funnel in here before we really get rolling today. And then we will get rolling. If you're in the Discord already, Zeros, Fredward, hey Joseph, good to see you here, Modobi. If you are in the Discord already, you can navigate over to the rules in the sidebar right under the welcome. And then you should see Josh's new post, Get Frameworks here. There's a Google Drive link, and those will give you free access to my new versions of the framework. All right. Cool. Josh Bosch Tovar says, looking good in the YouTube chat. Looking good. Deuce. Hey, Stevenson, what's going on? All right. The birds are chirping for me. The sun is up. The windows are open. It's going to be a good day today. Okay. So I feel like we've got some people in. I see some people in the Discord. We've got a good chunk of people watching the stream now. I am going to go through these frameworks today, and I'm going to go through how you can grab them as well. So just quickly, before I hop into the frameworks themselves, all right. All right. So this is the Discord here for everybody on YouTube who's not inside of it. This is the Discord audience here. This is where people are coming in, and if you hear them actually ask me a question, that's how they're doing it. They're joining the Discord. They're coming into here, as you can see their lovely profiles, and they ask me a question. Now, up on the Rules tab, when you enter, you'll go through an initial questionnaire, and then you'll land on this Rules tab. And you will notice that there is a new post by Josh today to get frameworks here, and there's a Google Drive link. Now, that Google Drive link is going to take you to... Let me copy, and then if I open this in a private new incognito, yeah, okay. So if you are just not signed in to anything, it's going to take you here. I'll put this back over here. It's going to take you to this place, and I'll show you guys in the Discord. Make sure we're good to go. Yes. Okay. So it'll take you here, and also Google Drive is free. If you don't have a Google Drive account, I like using Google Drive. I think it's very, very helpful, and I do a lot of my documents in here, and it's easy to share them and give notes, especially if you want to get notes. However, if you don't, you can always download these documents right over here, and then if you are signed in, what will happen is when you click into these like this, here's the practical story framework. If you're not signed into Google Drive, it's not going to let you really do anything except download them. However, if you are signed into Google Drive, what? Okay, are you good? If you are signed into Google Drive, these are set up to where you can go over to the File tab here and hit Make a Copy, and it will make a copy of this document for you, and then you can have it on your Google Drive and in your computer. Oh, and okay. And here we go. So yeah, File, make a copy right there if you're signed into Google Drive, or if you do not have a Google Drive and you just want to use them offline, you can download the documents and do it that way. So now let's actually go through this a little bit and see what all I have made for you. So I'm going to open all these up because we're going to go through all 4 of these today. They all have the same basic idea or the same basic bones, but they have some different ways of how they are specified toward their particular medium. Claude, the link is in the Discord. So if you click the link, Josh, if you want to put a link for people to join the Discord now in the chat, that'd be awesome. And people can join the Discord, and then in the rules tab at the very bottom of the rules tab, once you read the rules, you can receive your free story frameworks from me. You can grab them, download them, make a copy of them, that sort of thing. Josh has just put a link to join the Discord in the YouTube chat, so if you're not there, definitely do that. Okay, Joseph, I do see your question. I'm going to go through these frameworks first, and then we will get to questions afterwards. Let me take this off. Okay. All right, so here is my story framework. So first, I want to go through the practical short script framework here. The reason I want to start with this one is it is the smallest. It has the most kind of bare bones to it. And so in that way, you can see how I'm adding and building in all these other layers to the larger stories. But this gives you a nice, small, bare bones version of what to expect and how I'm looking at story here. So first we've got our log line. Then we have our main character, our genre. This first page is just getting you a super basic sense of what we're looking at, right? So as you're trying to get just like a one-page understanding of your log line, the most important character in your story, and what sort of genre you're in, you get that in one single page. Then we go down to setting up the chessboard of your story, right? If you remember my chess analogy, what I'm doing here is I'm showing that to have a story, right, first we need to actually align the pieces like this, right? We've got 2 sides of conflict, right? We got white pieces and we got black pieces. And before we move them around on the board, we need to understand what kind of pieces that we're working with. And so we need to actually place them on the board to have an understanding of who are our main characters. Why is this character a knight? Why is this character the king? Why is this character the pawn? Why are they in their positions, right? So first, we're looking at your philosophical conflict, right? The core beliefs at the center of the story. So we've got belief 1, which is also can be the lie, and ultimately is the dominant values in the story, right? When we're starting off, some side already seems big and strong. And so because of that big and strong side, they are the dominant values, and many times that is associated with the lie. Then belief 2, the truth or the underdog values, right? What are we trying to prove to the world is true through the course of this story? That is usually the truth, and that is the underdog values in the story, the values that it isn't sure whether or not they are going to win. And then on this same page, we have the concept. And this is looking at our external conflict. So we've got our philosophical conflict here and our beliefs. We've got our external conflict as represented through our concept, in the sense that your concept is setting up a setting, right? It's setting up a particular world of the story that we are going to have conflict within. Usually, we're going to have the feeling of the dominant world and then underdog characters that are inside that dominant world. And so the dominant world is many times going to be the setting of the story. And then we have characters within that setting that are trying to change it, right? So in Snowpiercer, when Curtis begins at the back of the train, he's trying to go to the front of the train to overthrow Wilford, right? To change the system of the train to more benefit him. And that's what we're seeing happen here. So then we go into key characters, and key characters make up like these two pieces, right? Your beliefs are going to enter into your characters, right? The characters are the conduits for the beliefs at play in your story. And then the concept is the world in which those characters are going to exist inside of. And notice I'm looking at philosophical conflict here, external conflict, and then the third layer of conflict is the emotional conflict. And that emotional conflict comes out of the emotional relationships and attachments that characters have to other characters in the story. So now we look at characters, and we're going to get a sense of who is our main character, what is their belief. Remember that need is associated with the emotional relationships. If you're not quite sure what your character needs yet, need also ends up being more of what happens in the story's motion. If you can get a sense of what your character needs quickly, that's great. But it's also very good to start with the emotional relationships and attachments first, because out of those emotional relationships will be the need, right? It will be an understanding of, I need validation from this character, or this character is seeking validation from me and I must give them that. Or I must not put this character on a pedestal, as something we see in Snowpiercer. In Snowpiercer, you have this the falling of the dark mentor is what Curtis needs to realize to make the important choice at the end of the film. So at the end of the film, his opinion, his view of who his mentor is changes for the worse. And now he realizes, oh, that character that I thought was my mentor was actually a part of the lie. Therefore, I need to make a different decision that mentor would not have made. And that becomes the need in that sense. And then ultimately we have the want, which is the desire in the physical world, right? What do they actually want externally that they're going after? And then we have kind of our basic four-corner opposition here that also comes down into this here. So you can see we have our protagonist, who's usually we see them as the good guy, and they're usually starting off in the lie. And then we have our fake allies usually with them up here, right? They're in the lie, but they are perceived by the story as a good guy, right? Then over here we have, in a usual mentor situation, we have the truth, and the truth is held by the mentor, and the mentor is also a good guy. So this is your Obi-Wan Kenobi, this is your Yoda. These are the characters that are holding the truth that the other characters must learn in the story. And so we're following them, right? This is our Gandalf as well. Then we have bad guy in the lie, which is the antagonist. And this guy goes here, and usually this is why they talk about that the protagonist and the antagonist are mirroring each other in some way, is because they start off with some version of the same belief, right? They end up being on the same side from the belief standpoint, but it is their external situations and their character relationships that place them into conflict. And then over here, this is definitely an interesting character that can be hard to nail sometimes, is the fake opponent. And the fake opponent is essentially a character that looks like a bad guy. They're on this side, but ultimately they either embrace the truth or they held the truth the entire time, and we, the protagonist, did not see that. But then your fake opponent essentially goes there. So then we have our side characters. Again, this is the short framework, so I only have 2 slots for the side characters. I tried to make this as specific to each medium as I could. You may only have 3 or 4 characters in a short. I really believe in having at least 4 characters because it really rounds out your web. And if you're thinking about this from even the story circle perspective, right, there's these 4 quadrants within the story, right? So I think thinking about it in 4s just feels very, very natural. And then character set pieces, right? So once we have an understanding of what our philosophical conflict is, what our external conflict is, who our key characters are, well, now we can actually place them into their spaces. And so I've set this up in your larger set pieces and then your character set pieces. Your character set pieces are little settings that your character lives in that is an exemplification of what they believe inside, right? Just like how I was talking about the, what was it? Yeah, just like how I was talking about your room is an example of, is mental, right? Like your room looks like your mind. And so in the same way, your characters, their spaces will look like their mind. Right? So if you want to show that a character is warm, inviting, loving, these kinds of things, well, let's meet them in a warm, inviting, loving space because their external world is showing how they are internally. And so that goes for, your protagonist. That can happen for your antagonist. Maybe you have these individual set pieces in a short. It depends. But then you also have your concept in a single scene. And so these are more your set pieces of direct conflict where we have characters in a moment of conflict. They're not in their sort of usual world. This would be more of a character in their normal space. And now we have character in a space of conflict. And so you're going to, again, have your dominant world plus your underdog characters equals description of your set piece, right? So just like up here, we've got dominant world and underdog characters. Set pieces are a fractal of your concept, right? They're a mini version of your larger concept. So in Snowpiercer, we have the rebels, this revolution on the train, and then all of these set pieces here are different train cars where different moments of the revolution takes place, right? So it's a fractal. It's the same big as it is small. Then we have story objects, right? Character objects here. What are the different important objects the characters have? Do they use particular tools? Do they have a book that they carry around? Do they have a pencil? Do they have an axe? Do they have a gun? What do they carry? Do they have a necklace that's imbued with magical power, right? What is it that they have that is important to them? And then in the same way, these set pieces, kind of your set piece 1, and then character objects would kind of come up with these character set pieces. But these set pieces can also have particular objects that are valuable or important in some way. And so now we want to see what are those objects because they can be used as fuel for sending the story in motion, right? So in the same way, these are your characters, right? To come back to the analogy of the chessboard, right? These are your characters here. Let's just to make it bigger. So these are your characters, right? But also with the story, it also gets smaller because you have objects. So objects are also part of setting up the chessboard, right? Shoot. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. And now this is where we actually send the chess pieces in motion. Actually, I need to copy this over from here. The chess moves. Yeah. And I'll copy this whole thing actually. One quick adjustment for you. Okay. All right. And then This should be its own page as well. Great. Okay, so now that we've set up the chessboard, right, how have we set up the chessboard? Well, we've gotten an understanding of what our philosophical conflict is. We have an understanding of what our concept is. We've now filled that world, that space, and these beliefs. We are now attaching the space and the beliefs to characters that are the embodiment of that space and of those beliefs. We understand where they are in opposition. We might have some side characters that also have beliefs. We've understood our set pieces, characters in their location, and your concept in a single scene, your moments of conflict, right? This is going to be where Frodo, the underdog character, is in Mount Doom, right? At the end of Lord of the Rings, Frodo, our underdog character, is in Mount Doom, and now we have this kind of set piece. Now we have the chess moves. So now this is a great point to think even deeper about what is your protagonist lie, very specifically. What truth must they learn to make the right choice in the climax? And then this is about the need. How is learning this truth attached to a meaningful human relationship for the protagonist? So essentially, again, thinking about what is the emotional attachments and what do they need from this other character here to realize the truth? So the purpose of these questions are, again, to help you spend time and attention on these different pieces, right? The purpose of this document is not to perfectly make your story totally right the first time through it. It is meant to force you to think about every single element that needs thought and attention from you if you want to create something that is actually really strong. From here, we go into the full story breakdown. Now, again, we are doing the practical short framework here. So shorts are going to be one act. So if you have something that's 10 pages to 30 pages and you're writing a short, it's going to be a one-act short story. Therefore, it is going to have one single story circle. It's going to have one act. You're not having to break it up any further than that because you don't have the space really in your story. If you go further down, breaking it up, many times doing that just brings more confusion than it clarifies. So that's incorrect. Okay, so then we have setups, reminders, and payoffs, story symbols, and motion. This part is fairly bare, as you can see. Actually, I might be able to... Can I make this look pretty? Yes. Okay, I'll do it that way. That'll be prettier. So once you have these story objects and you have these different motifs, now you can think about how might those story symbols, whether they're objects, whether they're a line of dialogue, whether it's an important piece of information, how are they involved in the story? How do we see them set up in the first half and then paid off in the second? That's the purpose of this, to think about what are those, like you now just created these important objects and these important ideas. How are we actually seeing them play out throughout the structure of your story? And then we get into the scene-to-scene outline. Now, this is how I like to do a scene-to-scene outline. I like to do a one-sentence description per scene first, so that this can give me, let's say there, as I have here, let's say there's 8 scenes in your short script. This allows me to write one single scene under the story circle beats. So ideally, you would fill out the story circle and then come down here and write, just copy and paste those story circle beats to here. And then now you're saying, okay, what scenes do I need to express the story circle beat that I've written up here? And now I'm writing that out in one single line to give me a sense of what needs to go where. Then, once you have that, now you can write a detailed scene-to-scene outline. And this takes my scene formula, which you can find in my second latest YouTube video, and applies it to every single scene in the story. So now you can have an understanding of what the character wants, what is a scene object, right? Now this is tying this back up to here. Do we have a scene object here? Do we have a object that is important to the scene and to the scene's conflict, to the choice in the scene? Then we have choice presented, right? All drama is choices. Choices are everything. So, choice presented, will A or B be chosen? Side A versus side B, where do all the characters in the scene stand on the choice? Who has the power of the choice, right? Who gets to make the choice? And then how is pressure built on the choice within the scene? And then ultimately, what option is chosen? That's the scene formula. And so through here, I have that scene formula built out. So the idea would be, in a perfect world, right? And this is not going to happen, your first time through a framework. Don't expect it to. But in a perfect world, you could come in, you could write a lot of ideas here about what your beliefs are, or what your concept is, what your beliefs are. Then you come in here and you fill out who your characters are. You get an understanding of what they believe and how they are interacting with each other in four-corner opposition. Then you get a sense of your character set pieces, and you get a sense of your objects in the story. Then you have all the pieces you need. Then you're able to come in here, get a sense of what that arc is supposed to be, write out the story circle beats, figure out where your setups and payoffs need to be between the setup half and the payoff half. And then you can come down into the scene-to-scene outline, writing one line per scene, and you already have a sense of what this might be because you have a sense of what these bigger story circle beats are. Then you're able to come in, write a detailed scene-to-scene outline, and ideally, by the time you get all the way to the bottom of this document, you should be ready for drafting. Now, does it actually work like that in practice? Yes and no. How it really works in practice is you might have an idea for a scene, right? You might have an idea for a surprise problem that's going to send your story into a climax. So you might start by coming all the way down into here and saying, okay, well, I've got a vision of these characters. They have a particular scene object. This is kind of the choice in the scene. Boom, boom, boom. And now you've got the scene. And then from this point, now you can say, okay, what can I take from this one individual scene that is, again, a fractaled microcosm of the entire story, and say, how can I start to build this out? Well, if you have characters, then great. You can come back up here and say, okay, well, I have a couple characters in that scene. Let me throw them down here. And then you can come back and say, okay, well, what else did I have? Well, I thought of a scene object, right? They're fighting over this amulet. Okay, great. So whose amulet is that? Where is it going to start? What's the history of this amulet, right? And then you're able to go back up there and work on your character objects and your set piece objects. And then A or B, what was the choice presented? And the choice is heavily connected to your beliefs, right? It can be, you can just have an external boring conflict, like, what are we going to eat today? That's kind of a basic conflict. But if you attach beliefs to it, right? Am I eating healthy or am I eating fast food? Well, now we have that deeper layer to the choice that's being presented there. And so that's going to give you a sense of what that philosophical conflict might look like. And then side A versus side B, you want to have an understanding of how, because we have this choice, how are the characters in the scene standing on the choice? Whose choice? Blah, 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 blah. And so then, no matter where you start, you can use your starting point to flesh out the other pieces of the story, right? This is not supposed to be, or does not have to be, this linear document. This is likely going to be the last thing a lot of the times. But at the same time, some people like to use their logline as the place where they explore concepts, right? They want to write 10 log lines, and then whichever one really sticks to them, then they go forward, right? People use it in different ways. But yeah, you don't have to know one particular thing. You don't have to follow it in a particular order, but you must understand that there is a fundamental interconnectedness to this document here, right? So when we're all the way down here in the scene formula, and we have characters, and we have an important choice, and we have an external one, and a scene object, right? These are all things that attach to your beliefs, your concept, your characters, your character objects, your story objects, right? It's all connected. It's one. What you are building when you are writing a story is this unified idea, right? This sort of unified story, right? This unified journey we're taking someone on. And really it just all comes down to what is your level of commitment to the detail and the clarity of that story. And so everyone who comes to me with a story, they're just on the spectrum somewhere of their level of clarity and completeness in that story. So a lot of times I'm not really changing someone's story vision, right? They're not coming in saying, hey, I want to write this action movie and I'm trying to get them to write a horror film. It's more just, okay, what's not complete yet in the story that you're telling? What have you not yet added in? Do you have a clear genre? Do you have a clear philosophical conflict and a concept? Do you have characters that can actually fill out a four-corner opposition, which is one of the reasons I really like 4 characters minimum in a story, because 2 characters in a story is rarely as interesting. And it does not allow, if you have a protagonist and an antagonist, and it's just those 2 in the story, it doesn't allow each of those characters to go talk to a third party and have a discussion about this conflict, or what are they going to do, this kind of thing, right? And that adds a lot of drama. And then those characters can be part of the 4-corner opposition. So this is the short framework. Again, if you're just hopping into the stream, I'm giving you these frameworks for free. You need to join the Discord, and then in the rules channel of the Discord, read the rules, and then at the bottom, there is a link for these framework documents. It will take you to this folder here, where you can see the feature version, the short version, the TV hour-long version, and the TV sitcom version. So that was the practical short script framework. Now, let's go over to the feature. I see we've got some friends in here already grabbing it. That's excellent to see. Now, this one is the one that I have really built everything off of, because it is a long form story that is self-contained. So this one, I kind of built this one first. This one is the framework. And then the short, the TV hour and the TV sitcom essentially are all downstream from this main framework, the practical screenplay framework. So very similar to what you've already seen. We got a log line. I'm asking you a question about your main character, asking you a question about your genre. Genre, I know that this might be the least clear element of this first page. I'm working on all new course material for these framework documents that will be inside the practical screenwriting course, and in that I'm going to cover this. So I'll give like a lot of examples and that sort of stuff. Okay. So then again, we've got setting up the chessboard of the story, philosophical conflict and concept. Again, we have our key characters. We have our 4-corner opposition. We're going to have a lot more side characters. We may even have way more than this, but this is what I threw in here. Now, this is a big part of a longer story, right? Which is the character hierarchy and relationships. And again, this is where we get in our emotional conflict. So the larger your story, the larger your character clumps fractal. Let me explain. In a short script, you are unlikely to have 12 characters, or it's very hard for you to have important key characters and have a lot of them in a short, right? It's just not really possible. However, each of these key characters, they essentially become, sort of little kings of their own world, right? where the larger our story is, the more we have characters outside of protagonist versus antagonist scenes talking to their allies and making decisions with characters that are within their posse, right? This is where character hierarchy comes into play. There is a natural hierarchy in life, and there's a natural hierarchy in story. And if you understand the natural hierarchy, it will allow your stories to become clearer. A lot of the times what happens is people write 12 characters that are all kind of the same level of importance, and that makes their stories bad because it is unclear as to which characters we should be placing our attention, right? However, if you place characters as side characters under your larger decision makers, right, your 4 key characters, now these smaller characters become part of the debates and arguments and the way that this character makes a decision. Remember how I was talking about the scene-to-scene outline, where we have this question about who has the power of the choice, right? And also, where do all the characters in the scene stand on the choice? This is how this is coming into play, right? So you might have 6 characters in a scene, but there's only going to be 1 decision maker, right? Or 2 that are in direct conflict with each other, right? If there's 2 and they're in direct conflict, well, then now they're fighting or something, and whether verbally or through action, and now you have that kind of thing. But these characters essentially help their lead character make the decisions, or they do what that character says. And so now we have this going on. Someone is asking if I have a story broken down in my framework. I have examples of films broken down according to my story framework inside the practical screenwriting course. Right now they are in a bit of an older version of the framework, because I'm doing a big overhaul, obviously, of the framework, and then therefore a big overhaul of the course. However, if you want to see some breakdowns of some films through my story framework, you can find those inside the practical screenwriting course. Okay, so then same kind of thing, right? Set pieces, character set pieces. And then I have set this up with a feature has 4 acts. And so I've put 1 set piece to consider for each of the 4 acts. Act 1, set pieces, 2 set pieces, 3 set pieces, 4 set pieces. And you can have more than 1 here. You likely will, because you're going to have more than 1 scene, right? But I'm doing this just for clarity to say, think about each of your 4 acts as having, like, what kind of set pieces might exist in there. Where are we going to see a big clash between our characters? So you can think about, okay, I need a set piece for each of my 4 climaxes, because you're going to have a climax at the end of each of your 4 stories acts. Again, story objects, set piece objects, right? Same kind of thing as you saw in the short version. And then again, the chess moves. Now, here I express how I break down a screenplay story circle and how I kind of open up the detail of a screenplay using the story circle and doing that in a fractaled kind of manner. So, first, we have the full screenplay story circle. This is all 100 pages of the screenplay distilled down into 8 beats, right? So there's going to be a lot missing here, but what we're going to have very clearly, we're going to have an understanding of who our character is, what do they want, and then in Act 1, we are understanding what is the inciting incident of this story. That's the biggest piece for Act 1, right? It's the most important beat, really sends us on the journey. What is our inciting incident? In Act 2, we're going to have our midpoint, and then we're going to have, at the same time together, our huge midpoint problem. And the midpoint problem is here because this is like the dark climax of your story, right? This is this is where your character has gone onto the journey, holding on to their lie. They've gone as far as they can, and they realize, oh no, I was wrong about something huge, right? I have believed in the lie. From there, now they go up, back up the circle, and then they're going to go towards the climax where they can win the day. And that is going to be your climax here. So to start, we're looking for 3 key beats. We're looking for what's our inciting incident, right? What's starting our story circle off? What's our big midpoint and midpoint problem where things go horrible? And then what might be our climax? Once we have that, now we can go one step into detail. We can say, okay, rather than just using one story circle to express the entire thing, we will use 2 story circles. We will use a story circle up to the midpoint because we have an Act 1, which is our setup, and an Act 2, which is our midpoint climax, right? This is going to be our midpoint climax. And then we have the screenplay to the climax. Act 3 is another setup act, and Act 4 is our final climax. And so this you can then say, okay, well, I have some detail here. I'm going to take this detail and I'm going to add another layer of detail here to give me a little bit more. Then you can get into the full story circle breakdown. This is where I spend the majority of my time in the structure, which is every single act, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4 all have their own fully fleshed out story circle because they are their own act. An act is a story. An act, right? It's a movement where something happens, something changes. It is an act, right? So to have an act, to have a moment of change, a movement of change, it has its own story circle because to have a moment of change, you have a story circle. Okay. Now we get setups, reminders, and payoffs. Just like we had in the short, now we have it again. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. This is where we're going to have the objects and the motifs that are placed earlier in the story. How are they evolving and growing as we go through the initial setup, right? So we're setting up our pieces, then we're paying them off. Setting up, paying off. Then, once again, into the scene-to-scene outline. Now, as you can see here, I have listed 15 scenes for a act. And this is an average. Some acts might have as little as 10 scenes. Some acts might have as many as 25 or so. But if you think about an act has to be 30 pages, right, for the feature length process that we have, right? So if we've got 100 to 120 pages to write a feature, well, we divide 100 by 4, that's going to give us 25 pages. We divide 120 by 4, it's going to give us 30. So if you take 30 pages and you say, okay, well, I want to have scenes that are not all a half a page long, right? If we have 15 scenes in a 30-page act, we have an average of 2 pages per scene. So you can get a sense of how much time and space you are going to have for your different scenes, depending on how this is supposed to flow. And so they can also help you not get super caught up in one scene where, for whatever reason, this scene is 6 pages long and it doesn't need to be, and you need to use that somewhere down here and that kind of thing. It can help get that sense of what really does need to be the correct size of this circle I'm sending the characters through. And so then I have this repeated. And again, you're writing one line per scene. You're not writing paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. You're trying to get a distilled understanding of what is the key movement of drama in this individual scene. And then finally, once again, the detailed scene-to-scene outline. And this is taking all 15 of those scenes, and you're able to actually write in exactly what's happening. And once you go through this, it should give you a very clear understanding of how to write your draft. So that is the practical screenplay framework. So once again, if you're looking for these documents, join the Discord below. Should be below. There's also a link in the chat above. Josh put it in there, Bosch Tovar, where you can join the Discord. And in the Discord, at the bottom of the rules section, which should be the first section you get into, you will see a link to this folder document. Go into this folder, and then you can copy. You can go like this. You can hit File, make a copy like this, and you can put it in your drive. Okay, continuing right along, and I'm going to go a little faster now just because a lot of this is repetitive because stories are fundamentally the same. The practical television framework. This is for hour-long serialized TV. Serialized meaning like a Breaking Bad or a Last Kingdom or a Game of Thrones, where the story is evolving and forming and shaping. It's not reverting to its normal situation at the end of every episode. So some of the big changes that you will see in here is I did not blast this out further because it's difficult, because you can sometimes have a television show with the same amount of characters as a feature. You just have more going on. And then you can also have television shows that actually have more characters and larger storylines. A lot of that depends on what kind of story you're telling. So what I wrote here is, depending on the size and scale of your TV show, you may have multiple antagonists and or multiple protagonist characters in their own storylines. So if we take something like Game of Thrones has multiple protagonist characters that are on their own journeys that ultimately all link up wonderfully together in the end, but for seasons at times, they are on their own adventures that we're following separately, right? Daenerys is across the sea. Jon Snow is in the north. The Lannisters are in King's Landing, right? We have these different places that are handling separate conflicts that are ultimately intertwined. Or you can have something that's a bit smaller in its character web, but still takes that same amount of time. So, for example, in Breaking Bad, we have some villains that come out, right? We have that cycle through, like, what's his name? Is it Gustavo? That's the El Pollo Loco guy, I think. But anyways, we have him, but we have this like really set character web of Jesse and Walter and Hank, and Skyler, and these characters form this center of our four-corner opposition, and they don't really change. We're not following, six guys that are all being Walter White in their own way, like we would be doing in a Game of Thrones, right? So we're really focusing on Walter only in Breaking Bad. And so for clarity's sake, I did not blast this all open. But if you had something like a Game of Thrones, you could say, okay, Jon Snow is a protagonist, but then you could literally copy this whole thing, paste it down here, and then be like, okay, I'm going to make Daenerys Targaryen another protagonist, and who's her main antagonist, and who are her people, and blah, 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 right? So you can have multiple of these four-corner blocks as the scale of your story enlarges. Why? Because it is a fractal, right? Again, it is the same big as it is small. Already I showed you the short version, right? The short is the smallest version. Why? Well, because it is simply the shortest. the longer you get, the more you can fractal in. So it's not like, if you're going to have, when people ask me like, can I have multiple protagonists and stuff? It's like, you need to really be clear on what it is you mean when you ask questions like that. Because if you said, can I have 3 guys in this web that all represent this guy? I would tell you no. But if you have 3 protagonists, that means you will have potentially 3 mentors, 3 antagonists, 3 fake opponents, right? Like, you actually have, they're not separated. Like, they are not individualized. They come with their web, right? It's a fractal. If you have a main character, you will have main opposition. And then you will have the gray opposition that are in the in-betweens, like a fake ally and a fake opponent. So if you have 3 protagonists, they need to at some level be split. If they're all serving this function and they're in the same story and they're in the same 4-corner quadrant all together, then what you probably really have is an undefined character hierarchy relationship, where one character is the protagonist and then you have a couple side characters that are on the journey with that protagonist but are not themselves the fundamental decision maker of the story. And so understanding who makes the choice in the scene, understanding who's going through the arc, helps you understand your hierarchy. It helps you understand what sort of 4-corner opposition you have. And it helps you understand whether you have a story that does actually have multiple protagonists or if you have a story that does not. What's interesting, and I have that video about 4-corner opposition on my channel, and it's about the Last Kingdom. And the Last Kingdom is a big scale, but only is this big. There's not really multiple protagonists. Like, Uhtred really is the only protagonist in the story. He is our Jon Snow. But there's not like a Daenerys, right? There's not this other person that's across the sea with their own huge thing going on. All the other characters fill one of these, or the 4 or the 3 other very core characters in the story fit into one of these key points. And so that's how that works. And then we have character set pieces. And then I have season 1 set pieces here. So I listed this out as 8 episodes. Another common amount of episodes is 12. So you could do something like that. I would do 8 or 12 more than I would do 10 personally, because I think, like, just from the mathematic perspective and from a perspective of what's going on in your story circle beats, right? Where we have 8 story circle beats, so it usually makes sense to have 8 or 12. You can have 10. It's not the end of the world, but I think 8 works really nicely. So then, again, you have set pieces for each of these episodes. And then we go into the chess moves. Then I've got a full season 1 story circle for you. So this is where you're able to take a big look at the entire season 1, what's happening. So your inciting incident is going to be in your pilot, right? Remember I said that the inciting incident, midpoint, and climax are very important beats. So your inciting incident is going to be super important, and that's going to be in your pilot. Then your midpoint episode. Your midpoint episode is going to be episode, if you have an 8 episode season, your midpoint episode is episode 4. If you have a 10 episode season, it's episode 5. If you have a 12 episode season, it's episode 6. And then ultimately, what is our season finale? What is our climax? Let me see what's going on here. Oh, good. Looks like we're having a lot of people join the Discord. That's awesome. I'm getting notifications for it. That's great. Yeah, I want you guys to have these documents. I think they're going to be very useful to you. And I want you to bring these documents back to me on stream with stories that you are forming inside of them, and then we can take a look at them and we can work on them. So now we have season 1 up to the midpoint. Again, right, this is plotting the whole season, trying to get an understanding of what's going on from the big perspective in that story from beginning to end. So episodes 1 and 2 will be kind of here, episodes 3 and 4, episodes 5 and 6, episodes 7 and 8, right? I hope this idea that the story circle is a fractal is clicking. I know that can be a bit confusing at first, but if you understand that and you understand how useful the story circle is, it makes your structural writing process go so much faster and makes your life so much easier. So now we have our season 1 episode story circles. Notice I've saying each episode has 2 acts. Okay, so think about it this way. I already talked about how a feature has 4 acts, and that a feature's acts are usually 25 to 30 pages because we have a feature that is 100 to 120 pages long. In a hour-long pilot, how long is our episode? 60 pages, give or take, 5 to 10, one way or the other. It's going to be around 60 pages. Therefore, you want to split that in half rather than trying to shove 4 acts in like 12-page acts. I have found when I've worked with people that doesn't always work as cleanly. Sometimes it can work if you're really attached to the looking at your TV episodes as 4 story circles. You can. I have found just on a practical level that looking at them as 2 acts, your setup act to the midpoint climax, and then your act 2 to the episode climax usually ends up being a better way to set it up. That's what I found. I'm open to changes on that, but this works pretty well. So again, we have Act 1 and Act 2 for all 8 of our episodes, and then finally we got our setups and payoffs once again, and then we have our scene-to-scene outline just like before, where we go through Episode 1, Act 1, Episode 1, Act 2, and then this document, as you can see, there's a huge, we're on page 22 here, there's a hugely long, detailed scene-to-scene outline of the entire season 1 of what would be your TV show here. So, again, just so that you can have it all in one place. If you feel like you want to say, oh, I don't want to have my whole big outline in here, but then great, you can take this and put it in another document or whatever. Like, once you take them from me, it's yours. And then, yeah. So then let's go to the final framework, the practical sitcom framework. So people ask me a lot about writing sitcoms, and I've built you a framework for it. Again, so this is for half hour, but it's really built with sitcoms in mind. Not necessarily with like half-hour serialized stuff in mind. There are half-hour serialized stuff out there, like The End of the Effing World is a serialized Netflix show that's half-hour. So that stuff does exist, but this is for sitcoms specifically. So now genre, one of the things I added in here is the archetypal conflict of a sitcom. Because it is a comedy story, the archetypal conflict is going to be the straight man versus the crazy people, right? You're going to have some version of that, right? Whatever their beliefs are, whatever you're building into the underlying philosophical conflict, that's something else. But the archetypal human conflict here is going to be the straight man versus the crazy people. And so what you can do is in the setting portion of your genre, this is where you can experiment with a setting that we haven't seen before. So there's a few sitcoms with key settings that come to mind, right? We have like Rick and Morty has the crazy big sci-fi setting. The Office has The Office, right? The American and British corporate work environment. Friends has like the 20-something New Yorker lifestyle of the 90s kind of aesthetic. There's a few of those, right? Then you also kind of have Frasier within that. You also kind of have Seinfeld is also within that. So what would be an interesting setting for your sitcom is a very, very important question. We also have Community, which is like at the community college. The setting is going to be huge for understanding your sitcom. Again, we've got our beliefs, we've got our concept. Now I wrote this out as recurring characters. So you want to think about in a sitcom, who are the characters that we're going to see over and over and over again, right? I have 8 listed here. I think that's a pretty decent number for recurring characters. But you might have more like 5 or 6 that are the real key recurring characters. That's kind of up to you. The Office, I think, has a larger number of recurring characters. Rick and Morty has a smaller number of recurring characters. It depends. Again, we can still have 4-corner opposition within this, understanding where our main character stands, who is their main opponent, main fake ally, main fake opponent. And then these other characters can also serve as characters, again, within the hierarchy, right? So down here, when we have character hierarchy and relationships, you might have recurring and episodic characters that are positioned behind your protagonist, positioned behind your antagonist, behind your fake ally, behind your fake opponent, right? There's certain characters, we can probably assume in an episode of The Office that Stanley is going to be opposed to whatever stupid thing Michael wants to do that episode, right? So because of that, now there's a natural dynamic that forms within the recurring web, and then that dynamic can be upset and changed based on the episodic characters that come in. And like I have up here, I have the episodic characters, and you can figure out who they are, where you want them to be. We again have set pieces. Now, a lot of times in sitcoms, you're going to have a few key set pieces that really stay, right? Like we have the big set piece of the office floor, right? The Dunder Mifflin work environment, right? We have the place where they come to do their work. That is a huge set piece, and it is recurring over and over and over and over again. And then you also have smaller set pieces that are episodic, right? So that's a big thing that you have with sitcoms, is this nature between the recurring parts, the parts that are unchanging, always there, certain characters, certain set pieces, and then you have the episodic parts, the parts that come in for an episode and leave, and come in for an episode and leave, and so on and so forth. I listed out 8 episodes again. That's a little short for a sitcom. However, there's also a pretty good number of sitcoms that don't have a ton of episodes. Trailer Park Boys, for example, has 6 episodes in its first few seasons. And I think that works so well. I mean, I think even having 6 is not bad. So we've got that. And then we've got the chest moved. So this is kind of an interesting point, and this is some stuff that Dan Harmon brings up. And that in a sitcom, your characters never really learn. Because if they learn, you can't write another episode. At the end of each episode, your characters will revert back to their old ways, and any learning they did in this episode will soon be forgotten. This is part of why sitcoms were so popular, because there is they kind of want you to be in a certain stasis, right? They want you to not really change. They want you to go to work and come home and then sit down and watch a sitcom of somebody going to their work and coming home and nothing really changes. And so part of the purpose of a sitcom is to kind of keep the viewers in their current thought processes. And so because of that, sitcoms usually have characters that are not learning. Even if they go through wild character change, a lot of times you'll see a sitcom episode where a character goes through wild character change, and then at the end, something happens that forces them back to where they started. And then we essentially have the reset period at the end of an episode where we are resetting to the old way, the old situation for that character, so that we can go into the next episode and things are relatively the same. Obviously, there can be small changes and different changes, like things do change in The Office, things do change in Rick and Morty, things do change in The Boondocks, things do change in Trailer Park Boys. But they are smaller changes over time. And sometimes it's like something that changes and then is left over here for a few episodes, and then we return to that thing later on. Also, you have an A plot and a B plot in Sitcom specifically. So what you have is you have your main character. They're doing some sort of major mission or adventure or whatever. And you will also have some other character that is having their own smaller journey that is separate structurally, but might be slightly intertwined with the A plot. But most of the time, this is something that's happening mostly separate, and then maybe in the climax they come together or something like this. But you actually have two separate stories here. And so you have this plot is taking up maybe 12 to 15 minutes of your sitcom episode, and then this one is taking up, I don't know, between like 5 to 8 or 9 minutes. So it's definitely the smaller plot, and that's how that works. So there are B plots in sitcoms specifically, sometimes in other types of media, but it's a big sitcom thing to do. And I have that listed out for you as such. And then again, setups and payoffs. And again, your scene-to-scene outline. And then your detailed scene-to-scene outline way down here. Da-da-da-da. And that is the sitcom framework. So, hopefully this is helpful to you all. Again, if you want these frameworks, click the link to join the Discord. Josh just put it in the YouTube chat again. When you join the Discord, it'll take you to the rules channel. And at the bottom of the rules channel, you will see a post that says Get Frameworks Here. When you click that button, it's going to take you to this group of files here. If you are not signed in to Google Drive, it will look like this. Let me see. So if you're not signed in, it's going to look like this, and you can like download them as docx files here. If you are signed in, it's going to look like this. You can open one up, hit File, make a copy, and it will add it to your Google Drive from there. That's how I recommend you do it, because then if you want to share that document back to me in a live stream, then you can use the little share button up here, copy the link, post it in the live stream chat, and then we can actually take a look at your story. Now, as for okay. All right. Now, what I'm also doing right now is in the practical screenwriting course, there is my current version of the framework. It's like 75% of what you're looking at now. So it was an older version of it that I had developed back in 2022. And then I spent a lot of 2023 refining this and getting it clear. So now I'm working on a lot of new course material that's going to go through all these frameworks. It's going to have full examples for each of these, not just right now in the course. You can look at some framework examples that are of features. So I have some feature films in there. I think it's got Truman Show, Sicario, Up, Snowpiercer, like maybe one or two more. I can't remember. But they're all features. And then what I'm going to be doing soon, I'm hoping by the end of April, is have all new course material all done, and it will be all through these new versions of the framework. But in the meantime, I want you guys to have these, and I want you guys to be able to ask me your story questions through these documents. So when you're coming on the stream, if you want me to take a look at your story beats, you want to take a look at what you're working on, do it through these framework documents that I have provided to you for free. This will make it so that we can be the most efficient and I can be the most clear in helping you tell your story through these documents. All right. Joseph, the link is in the rules chat. I was talking about the YouTube live stream chat for the Discord link, but you are in fact inside the Discord. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Joseph is asking me a fairly long question here. You're listing the axe questions for the girl with the dragon tattoo. Sure you don't open this thought because of the exposition. Joseph, I haven't. Yeah, I think the dramatic question from the beginning of an act is going to be, will they get? The most basic version will be, will they get to the 5? That's what's in the mind of the protagonist. Will I get to my midpoint, which is as far as I can see? Then, when that 6 comes, the surprise problem, then the question is, are they going to be able to handle this 6 before they get destroyed by the antagonistic force? I mean, I think it will. So you're saying it's not meant to be dramatic, it's logic. I think it will be dramatic if the goal of the character is interesting and the opposition in front of them is, the right opposition. But yes, ultimately it's more about the logic of the story there. Yeah, about we are making it clear to the audience that we're sending that character to the 5 first, and then after that the big climactic question is, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to handle this huge problem that has just smacked us in the face? Okay. Hey, could you check my question? Just a few messages above. Yes, I can. I noticed your name is Guess I'll Die Then. I would reflect, if I were you, if the name Guess I'll Die Then is something that you want to constantly be feeding your own brain. I don't know if that's great for you. However, I will take a look at your question. Hey Tyler, I wrote a pilot and managed to film it indie as a proof of concept. Excellent. If and when we get picked up, how would you advise doing a rewrite for a reshoot having seen what doesn't work on screen? So how would I advise doing a rewrite? Well, I mean, first you're getting an understanding of what didn't work. And then I think you are saying, okay, first, did this not work because it's a story problem, or did this not work because of some sort of technical production problem? I would filter those out and then say, okay, are those production problems going to influence my story? And if so, how? And then once you kind of have all that, now you can be back in the story and say, okay, let me re-clarify. And I would say, if you have this pilot, I would say take this document that I've just given you and use this. If once you're back in the actual story process, use this document to clarify that story. Alex English asks, is it possible to have a good story without a physical antagonist? So here's what I would say. Let's go to my favorite web whiteboard. I'm going to get a little deep on you here, so prepare. I'm going to copy this question over. Is it possible to have a good story without a physical antagonist? So let's think it this way, okay? We have our protagonist, or our hero, or our good guy, or let's even say our man of light, right? Now, you cannot have light without dark, right? And in a story, you need conflict. And you need two equal sides of conflict. So, in some way, we need a balance. We need a dark side, right, of some kind. Now, if you do not want it to be a person, it can be something else, but it will be something external. It will not simply be the character in their own head thinking thoughts and then the story ends. Those kinds of stories are pretty boring and they're not as powerful and they're not as well thought out. And so now you can have something that's like the man needs to push the boulder up the mountain, right? So now we have the man, and then we have the boulder is this external force that's pushing against him as he is trying to push this boulder up the mountain. And this boulder then becomes a character. And as you write the story more, you will personify that boulder. That boulder will have its own mind. It will taunt the protagonist as he tries to push it up the mountain. It will laugh at him. It will cause things to fall on him, right? It will be personified. It will have a spirit of a certain level, right? So you need two sides of conflict. Like we have the sun and we have the moon, right? We have day and we have night, right? We have these dualities. So if you want to, the easiest mirror of a character on this side is a character on this side, right? That's the easiest thing to do. If you want to do something else, you are actually making it more difficult for yourself. But you can. It can be a boulder. It can be an animal is still a character. So, but if you wanted to make it like a dark animal, right? It can be like a man versus wolf. There's that Liam Neeson movie that kind of works like that. But ultimately, you are going to have the other side, right? Conflict is always external. Conflict is both external and internal. And your story is going to be fundamentally external in the sense of what we are seeing. Okay? So a character okay. We've got a character. This is our external conflict. We have a character. We have the character of light, and then we have the character of darkness. They are in opposition to one another. Sonic and Shadow, right? Now, within that character, you can literally like do it like this, right? That character of light will in them have the light and the dark. The same way for the dark character, they will have the light and the dark. Internal conflict. Okay. So, can you tell a story with no external conflict? Yes, you can. But it's very rarely that interesting. I mean, it's not always, it's not as interesting to watch, especially to watch. If you are writing a script, then you better have this. Because we have to point a camera on something. If you want to make a short story and it's just your stream of consciousness thoughts inside of a character, you can do that. But I've read those. Very rarely are they that interesting. Unless you are attaching them in some way to the external conflict. Joseph is asking, what does character spaces mean? It means their setting, character setting, right? Their house, their bedroom, the location that expresses who they are. So ultimately, this is why, like, is it possible to have a story without a physical antagonist? It depends on what you mean when you say physical antagonist. Okay? It depends on what you mean when you say physical antagonist. If you mean, is it possible to have a good story without a human person in conflict with my protagonist? Yes. But is it possible to have a good story without a clear force of external antagonism? I think it's very, very hard to have a good story without a force of antagonism that is clear, because it's like, would you say, is it good to have the sun without the moon? Is it good to have the day without the night? You wouldn't say that. We need these things. We live in a duality, right? That's kind of like what this guy is talking about, right? This is a symbol of the duality of conflict in nature, right? That's what is being shown here, right? The yin yang symbol, right? The sun, moon, light, dark, truth, lie, good, evil. So you need a level of equality here, right? This is why the protagonist, or like the hero and the villain, must match, right? Like you hear that a lot, like, oh man, Batman and the Joker are great mirrors to one another. It's like, yes, they are the perfect symbol for each other in their particular universe, right? They are the yin and the yang, they are these two sides. And then, there's a little bit of each of them on the other side, right? A little bit of that piece, right? That's what is being shown here. When people talk about character foils, it's like you're just looking for that mirror, right? You're looking for the moon to the sun. You're looking for the night to the day. And yeah, Tao Chi. Jalila is asking me, to what extent and how would you use ChatGPT or AI to help you write a screenplay? I have tried to use ChatGPT and AI to write a screenplay once, kind of casually, and then I had two different writers of mine do it without me. One of them doing it for a network, for a studio, and both of them essentially failed to come back with something that was useful or interesting. I don't think I think AI has the most potential in regards to being able to create images like Midjourney and Sora and these AI generated images is really interesting to me. But ChatGPT has nothing for me other than maybe just it's just Google. It's just a different kind of Google. It's Google with a different interface. It's not that special. You ask it questions and it can give you specified information. It can give you its answer. But it's doing that. It's not thinking. It's not generating any creative thought ever once. I have never, ever once gotten an interesting creative idea from any AI. Maybe I just haven't used them enough, but every single AI that I have used comes back with the first thought, the most basic ideas. Now, if I was like, can you generate 300, can you make me a list of like 300 hand tools that I want? They could probably do something like that. And then you can be like, okay, well, I want this character to have like a drill, or this character to have like a hammer. But like any sort of real creative thought, it is impossible for it to do because it's not even AI. It's just an interface. Like it's just a library and it's just grabbing information from a library, right? It's not an artificial intelligence. It is an indexer of information. So I'm more interested in the image creation. GPT can write half decent brand copy, but I can't get it to write anything truly inspired. Yes, because it cannot be inspired. What does inspired mean? Inspired means God breathed, and that really means soul breathed, right? AI has no soul. I think this idea that we are just physical beings only and there is nothing spiritual about us at all is total hogwash. And because of that, we are the source of soul, we are the source of man-made creation that feels inspired, right? We cannot create something that is above us. That is the other lie too, that I do not believe about AI. And hey, maybe I'm totally wrong, but I doubt it. Where what we believe we have created with AI is something that exists above us. That's the narrative. The narrative is that, oh, we're going to create the singularity and we're going to create this entity. We are going to create God. That's the idea that AI is putting forward. But you can't even create a tree, right? Like, I think these people are so in folly that they think that they can create a God through a few lines of computer code. I think it's so much propaganda crap and everybody falls for it. And I don't think, like, you know, they were even talking about like even self-driving cars, the most basic AI that would actually have some level of real world applicability. Have you ridden in a car that's self-driving? I hate them. They don't drive like they have a soul. They drive bad. They don't flow, right? Like that's the problem with a computer, is a computer cannot flow. It cannot feel like the natural rhythm of creation, like in the way that you have a flow, you know? And like it cannot feel that. And so as long as computers cannot feel flow, they are not soulful. They are not God breathed. They're not inspired. It's not possible. Yeah, I think it's a lot of people believing that they can create things that are so big, or like, have you even noticed, like, find me one single man-made creation that is more interesting than a tree, like actually. Like, oh, we create dominoes and missiles. It's like this stuff, it cannot reproduce itself. It cannot flow with the natural environment. Like there's everything that has existed before we started making stuff is like above us in the creative hierarchy, right? Like, does that make any sense? Like, we are created beings, right? Or we are within a natural hierarchy, right? Like, we cannot create a tree. We might be able to cut a tree down. We might be able to destroy a tree. We have a lot of power of destruction, sure. But we can't create a tree. We can't create a fox. We can't create a bird. We can't create any of that. So I think trying to create something that is fundamentally saying this is going to be above all creation, it's like, that is a stupid idea. PVC Gaming is asking me about plot twists in story circles. Yes. I'll show you exactly where your plot twist goes. Plot twists. All right. So, we have our character. We have their want. We have our inciting incident. We have our choice to solve the inciting incident. We have want achieved. And then we have this little thing called the surprise problem. This is where your plot twist is. Then we have our climactic choice. And then we have our change. This is where your plot twist is. The surprise problem. Okay? What's happening is your character has a desire and a problem arises. Whether that arises from them going after their desire or they are simply immobile in their desire, they are not actively going after their desire. It can kind of happen both ways. But they encounter this inciting incident, they make a choice, and they get what they wanted on some level, right? They survive the problem, or they get the money, or they get the thing, right? They get to the physical location that they needed to get to, right? Indiana Jones grabs the idol in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But then what happens? A plot twist happens. A surprise happens. Something unexpected occurs. That unexpected thing forces them back up the circle, going this way, back through the climactic choice, and ultimately, once they survive, right, they make the right choice at the climax, they survive, they have the change. That's how it works. Smooth Criminal says maybe AI can be a villain in your next screenplay. You know what's interesting about that is it wouldn't be, because then it would just be a human. Because AI can't be fighting against humans unless it is a character, unless it is fully a human, unless it is also inspired, it is God-breathed, that kind of thing. So PVC Gaming. You may have hopped onto the stream a little late today. I walked through my entire short script framework and using this story circle in shorter stuff. If you're talking about super short form like TikToks and stuff, I mean, this still could work, but it's all just kind of one scene. But if you want these documents, they're linked in the description. In the Discord, you can hop in, and then in the rules tab in the Discord, you will see the link for those framework documents. All right, I see Stevenson has his hand raised. We're going to go to him.
Hello.
Hey, Stevenson.
What's up, man?
Not too
Um,
much.
First of all, I appreciate you for creating these frameworks and giving them to the community.
For
I
sure.
really, I plan to use them myself.
Excellent.
Um, I don't think you have time for this today, and if not, completely understand. But I had another what's it called? Um, a story breakdown exercise for you.
Okay. Yeah, I can do it today. Here's what I want to do. I'm gonna grab my water
Okay.
and maybe a donut, and I'll be right back. Give me 30 seconds, and then drop me a link to your document in the live streams chat, and then we'll go from there.
Gotcha.
Cool. Be right back, everybody. All right. Star Scourge. What is that? Radan?
Oh, well done.
Udan. Okay, cool.
Don. Yeah, I would help you say some of the words if you
Cool.
if you need help.
Cool.
Oh, real quick, how are you enjoying your new home, your new environment?
It's great. I'm very happy to be more outside of a city. I think it has
Mm,
been very helpful to be in nature more on a day-to-day basis rather than being surrounded by 7-Elevens into eternity.
okay, man. Happy for you, man.
All right, let's take a look at this story here. Okay.
Sorry. Someone in the chat always knows where this story is from. Shout
Do
out to you. Yep.
Okay, cool. Here we go. Long ago, under the red sky of Caelid, stood Redmane Castle, the fortress of the most powerful titan of them all, Starscourge Rudan. Rudan was born to Lord Radagon and Queen Renala. From a young age, Rudan was captivated by Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and even adopted his golden lion insignia as his own. Rudan might, Rudan's might was reflected by his enormous stature. But despite his menacing appearance, Rudan had a tenderness to him. Having grown too large and heavy to ride his beloved but scrawny steed, he set out to Celia, the town of forces, to learn how to manipulate gravity and in turn his weight to be able to ride it. So great were Rudan's gravitational powers that he commanded the very stars and held them in place with his powers over gravity, earning the moniker of Star Scourge. Following in the footsteps of his role model, Rudan had become a force to be reckoned with. But then, one day, he had met his match, Melania, Blade of Miquella. She had been
Sorry. Melania.
Melania. She had
And
been
Mikola.
Miquella, okay.
I got you.
She had been born into scarlet rot, a virulent and accursed plague of decay that corroded all it touched. But it was this rot that had infected her entire being, and from it she had never known relief. But in spite of it, she was a formidable opponent and the only other Titan to rival Rudan in strength. Along with her clean-wrought knights, she was undefeated in her campaign. She journeyed to Caelid to wage war against Rudan. In what would later be known as the Battle of Aeonia, they fought each other to a standstill until neither could go on. And in protecting Caelid from the infectious scarlet rot, Rudan himself fell victim to it. Although Rudan had survived, Melania's scarlet rot consumed him from the inside, ate away his psyche, and cursed him to roam the war-torn dunes of Caelid as a mindless beast who devoured the flesh of former friends and foes alike. Despondent at seeing their mighty hero suffering and crippled with madness, warriors enamored with Rudan were determined to give him an honorable death, one worthy of a Titan hero. They concocted a festival in which warriors from abroad would be invited to participate, traveling from afar to challenge Rudan in battle to put the Titan out of his misery. Okay, and this is from Elden Ring, right?
Yes, it is. Do you know what that is?
I know of the game. I haven't played it, though.
Gotcha. I haven't played it either. I'm just fascinated with the lore of the
Gotcha.
story of the game.
So I think this is kind of a 1 through 4. This is a setup that we're essentially seeing here. So this is
this is basically. Sorry.
Go ahead.
This is basically lore for one of the bosses in the game.
Mm-hmm. And so essentially how it's working, which is kind of nice, is that this is our setup. We get our main character. Again, he was captivated. So this is his want, right? He's captivated by Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. He wants to be like Godfrey, right? Like God. Golden lion insignia too, right? These are very like lion symbolisms, God symbolism, these kind of things. But then he's got a problem with his horse. But that's actually not the huge issue. This is really the issue. This is our 3. He had met his match, Blade of Miquella. Okay. So there is a story circle inside of here, and then it's also a bigger setup. So this would be inside the story. This would be our 3. Having grown too large and heavy to ride, he set out to Celia, town of forces. So this is our 4, right? So 3 problem. 4 choice. How am I going to solve this problem? Well, I'm going to go to Celia, town of forces, to learn how to manipulate gravity. And then he does it. So this is 5, right? 1 achieved. So great were his powers. He was able to gain these powers. Earns the moniker of Star Scourge. Boom. He's now gotten his want. He is now God for the first Elden Lord, right? But then one day, this is our surprise problem. He had met his match, Melania, Blade of Miquella. And now we get some exposition about her. She had been born into scarlet rot. It affected her entire being. She rivaled him in strength. And then she waged war against him. So this is our climax. In what would later be known as the Battle of Aeonia, they fought each other to a standstill until neither could go on. Rudan survived, but Melania's scarlet rot consumed him from the inside and ate away his psyche. And now this is the 8. Despondent at seeing their mighty hero suffering and crippled with madness, warriors now travel to put the Titan out of his misery. So it is a full story circle in here. We've got our character. Boom. 1. We got his want. From a young age, he was captivated by Godfrey. He wants to be this great warrior, wants to be Godfrey. And then, and this is also like, there's like a lot of like sun symbolism in this too. And then Melania is kind of like, we got Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, golden lion insignia. He kind of is like a sun. Then we have Melania, Blade of Miquella is the other side. Yeah. And then, okay, so yeah, it is a full circle. And then I'm assuming that in the game, you also have, like, you then go and fight him, right?
You fight both him and Melania.
Right. So essentially, from the character's perspective, this is the setup. And then down here, you get the 5 of get to fight this guy. Right on. 6, he's really tough. 7, beat him. 8, you have released right on from his curse. And that would be, this would be the payoff in the sort of story within the story. So this is a story inside of the story of our character going to fight this guy.
And okay, because you notice that Rodon has like a couple of wants. Like he wants to be like Godfrey. He wanted to be able to keep his steed, and like accomplishes both of these wants. So would you say like his final want is to beat this foe that confronts him?
Yes. This is why in the story circle, your character usually isn't seeing past the 5. So you get to this point, right, where character has a want at the 2, and then it's want achieved. And so for your character, part of what makes an adventure an adventure is your character is able to see what they want up to this point. In our case, our Star Scrooge Rodon, he sees up to this point. He solves the initial problem, right? He solves the 3. 3 is we've got horse problems. So now we're gonna gravitationally solve our horse problems. Right. Boom. Once achieved. Horse problems solved. Now, Star Scourge. We are following in the footsteps of his role model, right? Boom. Right there. You're being told that this is connected to the 2. See that? And so then, the 6, Melania was not even on his radar here. One thing you could have if you really made an in-depth story of Rodon is you would have some sort of Melania involvement here, even from a distance, or like the horse problems are like caused by her, something like that, where it's like she's not there yet, but out in the distance, here comes this villain. And so Melania is our surprise problem here. Our character did not expect to run into our what is she again? She's got the scarlet rot and all this craziness. And so what do they have? Well, we go to our climactic choice. You can also just term it as your climax. And in this, we have the Battle of Aeonia. I think I spelled that right, did I? No, but you get it.
Yes.
And so then, now we have the 8. Our boy cursed forever until killed by Elden Ring player.
What you okay from this story, if if there was a philosophical conflict, what would it be if there is one?
So, okay. So this is gonna be a little. I'm gonna go a little crazy here. So bear with me. I'm gonna take a look at this like this. Okay. So this is gonna be a little off the wall, but I hope you guys can follow along with me and not think I'm a total crazy person. I think I need to draw the circle before I draw the lines. Okay. Okay. So what's the philosophical conflict here? Well, it's not really super clear in the sense of there is a belief level philosophical conflict. However, what we have is I think we sort of have just natural duality conflict here. Okay? So we've got this character, right? Rudon, and he wants to be this sun character, God free. He wants to be God free. He wants to be the golden lion, right? This is like this is sun symbolism, right? So he wants to be the sun, right, in a way, or he wants to be. You can just say he wants to be the ultimate good. He wants to be the ultimate power. He wants to be the ultimate light in the sky, right? So however you want to, like, belief level, conscious belief level, there's not really a clear philosophical conflict. However, this guy wants to be the sun. He wants to be big light in the sky, right? He wants to be big and powerful. That's why he's captivated by Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, right? This kind of thing. So then he's great. So also we kind of have this upper side of the story circle is also the day. This lower side of the story circle is also our night, right? And so this is kind of where we get Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, just like we have like spring, summer, fall, winter, right? So what's really happening here is he's going through kind of like this nature fall path where unfortunately his 7 over here, right, where he should ideally spring and win and become the sun, right? If this was a rising arc, right, he gets to become Godfrey by beating the moon, beating Melania. He doesn't. And instead, the moon beats him down here, right? Sort of like the darker energy, right? He's the light. He's the upper energy. He wants to be the upper energy, Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. He wants to be golden lion insignia, all this. This is sort of like sun analogies. Then he goes down. He's dealing with these initial problems at the 3, 4, 5. Doesn't think it's going to be that bad. And then, we have a real problem down here in our sort of winter point, right, with our Melania character. And then he is unable to return to spring. Essentially, he is trapped in a forever winter. That's what's happening in this story. Right? So, like, this is kind of, again, where I'm talking about how, like, the story circle is connected to, like, it's an organic thing, right? It's something that just exists, not something that, like, I invented. So, in this case, we don't have this, like, conscious philosophical conflict of should I, help my family or be selfish or blah, blah, blah. It's more this person is trying to be of the light, right? The basic philosophical conflict here is very just simply light versus dark, good versus evil, that kind of thing. He wants to be of the light. He wants to be a good guy. But then he ends up descending down. He gains his gravitational powers, right? He gains And that's kind of interesting too, that he gains specifically gravitational powers. Again, kind of another adding to, like, where does he get the gravitational powers from? It's kind of interesting that it's when he's deep in the moon part of the story circle, right? This is the dark part of the story circle. If you look at Dan Harmon's expression of the story circle, the bottom part's the dark part, right? We have the light part, we have the dark part. And that's what we have here. And so then he gets beaten in the 6. Winter beats him. Melania beats him. He's unable to return, and now he essentially waits here in the eternal sadness for someone to come and put him out of his misery, right? That's why he's being put out of his misery. He stalemates at the 7, the point that he's supposed to cross back over into springtime, cross back over into the sun, win and become like Godfrey. He loses. He doesn't make it.
Okay. Excellent breakdown. So in this story, besides one of the things that could be better fixed is having a clear philosophical conflict.
Well, and I think it does have a. I think it doesn't. Like, it does have a philosophical conflict. It just depends on how conscious you would make that. Okay. If we built out this story to be more than just 1 page long, and we got a much clearer sense of who Rudon is, why he believes what he believes, the philosophical conflict would be clearer. But in this version, the philosophical conflict is essentially good versus evil, even though it isn't explicitly said as so. Or good versus evil, light versus dark, right? Gotcha. Rudon is the light character. Like, he is the good guy here. And then he is corrupted and unable to beat the challenge that comes up in front of him, and therefore gets stuck here. Gotcha. If there was a version where, and this is essentially, kind of a hero's journey. But then he has a fall arc. He does not survive the evil. He becomes the evil here. And so your philosophical conflict is very simply good versus evil. And in this case, our character becomes the evil. He cannot beat the evil. And now he's suffering. He's crippled. He's with madness, right? All of this is this phase right here, right? He's stuck right there. So if you wrote it out as like a feature, his specific dilemmas between good and evil would just be clearer because you would have a story that's not 1 page long.
Okay, I got you. Oh, and by the way, to give you a more in-depth answer as to why Rodon chose to have gravitational powers, put it simply, it's because, well, he is he's like a giant.
Okay.
And the horse that he rides on is just a horse of average size.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to be able to, and he cares about this horse, but he doesn't want to get rid of the horse because he cares about it. So in order to continue being able to mount the horse without killing it, he decides to learn gravitational abilities so that way he can learn how to make himself super light despite being a giant. So that way he could ride the horse.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I have last time we spoke, I was showing you one of my stories, and I told you that for my books, I was planning to have the page count being between 30 to 50. But in hindsight, I realized that the story is going to be shorter. It's going to be between 24 to 30 pages. So now I'm kind of struggling with how can I tell a more compelling story despite the fact that it's a very short story. I have an issue with that. I'm not sure how to make my story more impactful despite how short it is.
This is the story that we worked on.
Yes.
Have you built out some of the side characters?
Still developing that, but
That's where it's going to be.
I do plan to do it. Okay. So just okay. I got you.
I'm telling you, that's where it's going to be.
Okay. Okay, I got you, Tyler. Thank you again for this. I appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks for hopping on today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and wind it down here, everybody. Just to reiterate once more, if you want my story framework for the feature, the short script, the hour, the sitcom, you can find that inside the Discord under the rules tab once you join the Discord. If you're on YouTube right now, click the link that is in the description. It should also be in the chat as well. You can join the Discord and you can get these documents. You can download them or you can open them up and you will be able to view them, and then you can hit file, make a copy, and then they will be in your Google Drive. And then if you're working on a story now, I would love it if you could throw down what you're working on inside of that framework document, and then you can bring it to me on a live stream, and I would love to take a look. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today, and I will see you, should be same time tomorrow. Let me do a final check. Really trying to keep these streams consistent. Yes, tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. Be here. I'll be here. We'll work on some story. We'll have some fun. And yeah, see you tomorrow.